Welcome into the college basketball recap show. I'm your host, Coach Leak, here to break down everything that happened in college basketball tonight, February 22nd, Thursday night. We had a couple good games, not a ton of top 25 games. Before we get into the video, make sure to like and subscribe. If you like this content, check out our full podcast. We just uploaded a new episode, weekly episodes called the Slobberknocker Sports Podcast. We've got tons of great content. Also, check out the link in the description at www.dylanleaksports.com for free sports betting picks and free sports articles. I've got a blog on there. My sports betting picks have been red hot. We're on a 10-1 run. Jump on now. They're free. They won't be free for that much longer. I'm starting to have people pay for my premium picks, so make sure you jump on that. But let's jump right into our college basketball recap show. And we'll start with the game of the night, the only ranked matchup, which was Washington State, the number 21 team in the country, taking on the number 4 Arizona Wildcats. Washington State came into this game with a 10 out of 11 game win streak. They were on a 7-game win streak going into this one, and they made it 8 as the Fighting Mike Leaches take down the number 4 team in the country. And what a win for Washington State here. They were 13.5-point underdogs, won outright in one of the toughest venues in the country. Arizona was 13-0 going into this game at home this season. It's also the first time the Cougars have swept the Wildcats since 2010. And Washington State's been one of the surprises of the country. And I think this win pretty much seals that they're not only going to be a tournament team, they're going to be a top 6 or 5 seed if they keep winning. They've been outstanding. They're very good defensively, and they show that they can score tonight, too. If you haven't watched Jalen Wells, he's only the third leading scorer for Washington State. He's number 0, but he is outstanding. You're doing yourself a disservice if you don't watch him play as a college basketball fan. He was outstanding tonight. He was actually the best player on the floor. He's a 6'8 junior. This is his first year in Division I. He was a Division II player, All-American at the Division II level, averaged 22 points per game last season. What a pickup for Washington State to find this guy in the D2 ranks. He's been really, really efficient this year, 11.2 points per game, shooting 45% from three-point range, 83% from the free throw line. Tonight he had a career high in terms of Division I points, 27 tonight. Hit 6 threes. He was 3 out of 3 from the free throw line, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, had a steal, did not have a turnover the entire night. Nobody else made a 3 for the Cougars. The entire rest of the team was 0 for 8. He was 6 for 10. They are not even in this game without Jalen Wells. He was outstanding. Quick recap of kind of how it played out. It was a great game if you didn't see it. Last minute, Washington State led. It looked like they were in control. Games tied up, and the Cougars missed a shot with about a minute to go. On the other end, Caleb Love, who's been really, really good the last 8 or 9 games for Arizona, drives to the basket, finishes with an and one. It wasn't a foul. It was actually a really bad call. Gets the and one, makes the free throw. So now the Cougs are all of a sudden down 3. They had led most of the game. On the next possession, Miles Rice, who's the leading scorer for the Cougars, takes a really tough 3, misses it, but Andre Jakimowski, I don't know if I butchered that name, but he made the second most important play of the game. Massive offensive rebound off the miss. And instead of just panicking and going right back up, he made a great decision, looked to kick out to a shooter, and he found, guess who? Jalen Wells. Wells was in the corner, the left corner, and he caught it and shot it. And not only did he drain it, he was fouled on the 3. And all of a sudden, when it looked like hope was lost for Washington State, they had a free throw to go ahead. Wells would go on to make the free throw. On the ensuing possession, Caleb Love lost his footing, slipped, and traveled with just 4 seconds remaining. The Cougars went on to make 2 free throws. Arizona did get a look at a 3 at the buzzer from Caleb Love. It rimmed out. It's actually a ridiculous shot that looked like it had no shot coming off his hand, and it damn near went in. But I mean, this is a huge win for Washington State for that program, and this team is legit, right? They have good guards. They have a guy in Jalen Wells who can fill it up, multiple guys who can score the ball. Looking at it, they're 35th in KenPom and 32nd in the net ranking. There is not 34 teams better than this Cougar team in the country right now. They are a top 20 team legitimately. They're going to be in the top 15 in the AP poll come Monday. That's almost guaranteed. Arizona, on the other hand, tough loss. I mean, This has been a kind of a weird year for Arizona. I know they came into this game ranked fourth in the country, but they've had some really odd losses. And I have a hard time kind of evaluating this Arizona team. I have all year. Early in the season, I thought they were the second best team behind UConn. Um, you know, I know they dropped that game on a neutral floor to Purdue, but Purdue played really good. It was a good spot for Purdue. But then they started dropping these really weird games in conference. They lost to Oregon State as a double-digit favorite, lost to Utah, lost to Stanford. Just some very odd losses for Arizona. They look like they were getting their shit together lately, but then they come out and lose this one. I will say it wasn't like they were they didn't have a lack of effort, right? Or they didn't play poorly on the defensive end. Washington State just was the better team tonight, which I guess if you're an Arizona fan, you can hang your hat on that at least, because this team is mostly only lost when they've lacked effort and lacked defensive effort. And tonight that wasn't the case. They just got beat by a team who played better, and frankly was the better team tonight. I just don't like that Arizona has these games where they lose to these inferior teams. Not that Washington State is, but the other losses, because you look at last year, you lose in the tournament to Princeton. You should be coming out and beating every bad team you play and making a statement this year. They haven't done that. So that's my issue with Arizona. I still don't know what to do with them. I kind of feel like until you show me in March, I'm not going to trust you. It's similar to Purdue. So this was a tough loss for Arizona. Washington State, because they swept the season series, they're now tied in the loss column with Arizona. If they win out, they will be the conference champs of the regular season. I don't think either team is going to lose the rest of the year because the Pac-12 is pretty down. Both teams do have UCLA on the schedule, who's playing better. I know Arizona gets UCLA at home, whereas Wazoo has to play them on the road. But going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the Pac-12. Other ranked team in action tonight was number 2 Purdue. They were coming off that upset loss at unranked Ohio State, and they beat the living shit out of Rutgers tonight, 96-68. Zach Edey goes for 25 on 7 of 8 shooting. He was 11 of 11 from the free throw line. Outstanding game for Edey. And Lance Jones, the Southern Illinois transfer, had 17 points, 50% shooting, 3 of 8 from downtown. My opinion, Lance Jones is the key for Purdue this season. And I'm not going to be a believer in Purdue until they show me in March, kind of like Arizona. But they got this guy out of Southern Illinois. He's in his 5th year, and he might be the best transfer in the country. And it's specifically the best for Purdue because, he doesn't do a ton in the box score in terms of offense beyond scoring. He only averages 2 rebounds, 2 assists, but he does average 1.3 steals per game. One season at SIU, he averaged just under 2 steals a game. He's a very good perimeter defender who can guard any athlete, 6'4" or shorter. And that's something Purdue lacked. That is what really hurt them. Not only not having that guy, but not having a guy like that who you can play, who can score on the other end. So a guy who can score, who's a really good defender, he is key for them. If Purdue wants to make a deep run this year, Lance Jones has to play good, and he has done so this year almost every single night. He's been fantastic. He was great again tonight. He's going to be big for them. But, again, similar to Arizona, I just don't trust Purdue until I see them do it in March. They've just struggled too many times in the tournament. Purdue's last 16 games, they've played just one team who is ranked in the top 25, and that was Illinois at home. The Big Ten is just so down this year. I know Illinois is good, but they just don't perform to their talent level sometimes. That's the only other team who I think is got a shot to make a legit deep run in the tournament, like beyond the Sweet 16. You look at the next 2 teams in the conference, it's Wisconsin and Michigan State, and I'm not real high on either of those teams. In fact, I actually don't understand why the Net and KenPom like them so much. They're both top 20 teams, top 25 teams in those rankings, even though they're not ranked in the AP poll. And Michigan State, I don't really see it. They're decent. They just don't have a lot of guys who can score the ball, and they're not a typical defensive juggernaut that you see Izzo have. They're definitely playing better as of late. Early in the year, really, really struggled. But Wisconsin, on the other hand, I'm not a big fan of at all. I think they're going to be bounced early in the tournament. If they get a bad matchup in that first round against a good mid-major, they could absolutely get upset in the first round. I actually like the next two teams in the Big Ten better, Northwestern and Nebraska. I think those two teams actually have a better shot to make it a little bit of a run in the tournament, but not a deep run by any means. Overall, again, Big Ten's just down, and Purdue doesn't play, um, all that many good teams, so it's hard to evaluate them. And if it was like UConn, where, okay, they're beating a lot of teams by a lot, by 20, 30 points, and they're beating bad teams, it would be one thing. If it was like UConn, where they've done it in March. They've won national championships. They showed it last year. They showed it multiple years. So I trust that just because they're not playing great teams, they're going to find a way in March because they step up in those games. Purdue has not done that. So until they do that again, I just can't trust them in those spots. Moving on, FAU, Florida Atlantic bounces back off that loss to South Florida in their last matchup to take down SMU tonight, 80-70. Vladislav Golden led the way for the Owls with 21 points, 6 of 10 from the field. How about 9 of 10 from the free throw line for Golden? He is just a 65% free throw shooter on the year, but did a great job tonight from the line. Elijah Martin added 20, knocked down 3 triples, 7 boards, and 3 assists. He's an absolute stud. Elijah Martin's really, really good. John L. Davis, their leading scorer, had just 10 points on 5 of 14 shooting. He also had 4 turnovers. He did not have a good game tonight. But it said something about FAU that they can win a game by double digits, cover the spread. The number was 6.5 tonight, with their best player going 5 for 14 and having 4 turnovers. He did not play well whatsoever. That's why this team made a deep run in the NCAA tournament. But the issue with FAU this year has been their defense. Last year, they were in defensive efficiency 34th going into the NCAA tournament. They were a solid defensive team, and they played a really good defense in the tournament. This year, they are 101st in defensive efficiency. They've dropped nearly 70 spots year over year in defensive efficiency. They are slightly better from an offensive perspective. Last year, they went into the tournament 22nd in offensive efficiency, according to KenPom. This year, they are currently 13th. So they've improved a little bit offensively, but they have just taken such a huge step back defensively. That's been an issue. Specifically in their effective field goal percentage defense. They were 16th in the country in effective field goal percentage defense. So they forced teams to shoot low percentages last year. This year, they're 132nd. That is a drastic drop. Similar in offensive rebounding percentage, 50% offensive or 50th in offensive rebound percentage allowed last season. This year, 213th. Right, so huge drop-offs here on the defensive side of the ball. They're still a really good team, don't get me wrong, but they're playing in a better conference. They're not quite as good, at least in the regular season, right? They won 30 games in the regular season last year. Part of that is that they were in Conference USA last year. This year, they're in the American. Is the American loads better than Conference USA? No. A lot of those teams from Conference USA, the top teams, moved over to the American, but you didn't have SMU, you didn't have Memphis. South Florida's really good this year. Even North Texas and UAB have been pretty darn good. So there's that. Number 2, they go into this season ranked in the top 10, right? Like, this is completely different mode, right? Last year, you're kind of the surprise team that's having this Cinderella dream season. Now everybody's gunning for you. Every single night, you're getting everybody's best shot. And that's what's happened this year. And it's why they have a couple conference losses, and they probably aren't going to win the regular season title. It's probably going to be South Florida. And you look at it, it's funny how narrative changes. FAU was in a position where they should have lost the first round of the NCAA tournament. If you didn't watch that game last year against Memphis, Memphis had the ball up by 1 with 5 seconds left. And basically Kendrick Davis, the point guard for Memphis, threw up all over himself, turned the ball over, and on the loose ball, still at that point, Memphis clearly called timeout before the jump ball. The official signaled that there was no timeout and that the jump ball occurred. The ball went over to FAU on the possession arrow, and they scored in the final seconds of the game, which gave them a 1-point victory. If they lose that game, are they even in the top 25 coming into this year? Probably not. So, the way the run happened last year and all the preseason expectations, that has been partially to blame for this, but also they're just playing better teams. They're not quite as good. It kind of sucks. SMU is probably going to get in here, despite the loss. They're net ranking and their KenPom are both relatively high. They're 37th in the net, 40th in the KenPom. The issue with SMU is that they don't have a single quad one win. And this was probably their last chance until the tournament, in the American tournament. Not a single team besides SMU in the top 52 in the net rankings lacks a single quad one win. They're the only team who does not have one in the top 52 of the net rankings. So that is an important thing. That's a thing I would be a little bit worried if I was an SMU fan, just because we know how the committee has such a hard on for the net rankings, which I can't stand. But I would be a little bit worried if I was an SMU fan because of that. I also want to mention South Florida didn't play tonight, but just in terms of thinking about this conference, it really sucks that they're South Florida. It seems that they're not going to get in the tournament without winning the conference tournament, which to me is kind of ridiculous. South Florida has won 18 of their last 19 games. They have lost one game since December 2nd. Obviously, they had a really rough start to the season. They were 2-4 to start, and they lost to Hofstra, UMass, Maine, and Central Michigan. So that's why they are so low in the net ranking. But the problem is with the transfer portal and all these different things, NIL, and all the changing teams, it's really hard to evaluate a team that early. And the way they've played as of late is they're clearly one of the top 68 teams in the country. They're really clearly one of the top 35 teams in the country. They deserve an at-large bid. It would be a shame if they win the regular season conference and don't get in it, and you put in, an SMU team, which is very possible to happen. Moving on, though, we'll talk about a few other big conference games, and then we'll kind of breeze through some of the other games quickly. Minnesota gets a big win over Ohio State. They also cover the number. This was one of my best bets tonight. It was more of an opinion. Minnesota -3.5, -3. I liked the number if it was a bit lower. I thought 3.5 was a touch high, but it was a really tough spot for Ohio State, right? Their coach gets fired last week. They then have to play number 1 or number 2 Purdue at home. They pull off a massive upset, beat Purdue outright. Big emotional win, right? Get the win, but the thing is, when your coach gets fired and you have a win like that, it's hard to carry that momentum over, especially if you've not been a good team all year, and they hadn't. And now they had to go on the road to Minnesota, who's been an absolute cover machine, and they continued that tonight. The game got as close as 4 in the second half, but Minnesota really controlled it from the start, jumped on them early. Buckeyes could never break through, and Minnesota ended up taking it down 88-79 and covering the 3.5. Bryce Thornton for Ohio State, man, he was outstanding in the loss. The 6'1" sophomore guard out of Alpharetta, Georgia. He was 10 of 14, 10 of 11 from 2, 25 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, and a steal. I wonder if he's going to be a Buckeye next season. Obviously, he's a Chris Holtmann recruit, and Holtmann was fired last week. There's not a lot of loyalty in college basketball, but when your coach is fired, I wouldn't blame you one bit for leaving. So Thornton could absolutely enter the transfer portal. It'll be interesting because I think if he does, he will be one of, if not the most sought after transfer in the portal. He is a very, very good player, just a sophomore, and probably a guy who's going to play 2 more years. I don't see that guy going to the NBA with his size, even though he's really talented. So big possible transfer recruit if Thornton decides to enter the portal. Minnesota, this was a big win for the Golden Gophers. They needed it to keep their NCAA tournament hopes alive, or their hopes of getting an at-large bid, I should say. Elijah Hawkins, the 5'11" junior guard, he was a transfer from Howard. His previous season high was 16. He dropped a career-high 24 tonight on 4 of 5 from downtown, 8 of 11 from the free throw line, and he added 7 assists. He was absolutely outstanding in the win for the Gophers tonight. Dawson Garcia, who's the leading scorer on the season, averaging 18 for the Golden Gophers on the year. He dropped 22 of his own. He was outstanding per usual, 50%, north of 50% from the field, 9 rebounds, 4 of those offensive, and tacked on 2 blocks. Looking at Minnesota, this was a huge win, as I said. It keeps them alive, but looking at their rankings, they're 63rd in the KenPom. They're 73rd in the net. They're going to need a lot of things to go right for them to get into the tournament. They're 17-9 overall and 8-7 in the Big Ten. You think about a normal year, you're 7th in the Big Ten, you have a winning record, you probably get in, but considering Minnesota's non-conference strength of schedule isn't great, and specifically, they are just 1-5 against quad 1 teams, that hurts them a lot. And partially that is because the Big Ten doesn't give you a ton of opportunities like it would in the past. It used to be like a night in, night out type of deal. You'd have to play a quad 1 game. It's quad 1 or quad 2 every single night, but that's not the case this season. The Big Ten is very down, as I mentioned earlier. The next 2 games are really going to determine their season, right? They have 5 games left, but they have 3 more quad 1 opportunities, and they almost have to go 2-3 without dropping the other 2. They almost have to go basically 4-1 in their final 5 to have a legitimate shot. I don't even know that would get them in, but it would definitely put them in the conversation. They're going to Nebraska on Sunday, and then they go to Illinois next Tuesday. So those are Wednesday, rather. Those are 2 massive games, quad 1 opportunities. Nebraska's undefeated at home in conference play, and Illinois is one of the better teams in the country. I don't know if they're going to win either of those games. I would actually be surprised. Their other quad 1 opportunity will be the last game of the season at Northwestern, who is just as tough of a place to play as Nebraska or Illinois. So I don't know this team has a real shot to get in. They'd have to pull a miraculous turnaround here and finish with 4 out of 5 wins, preferably not dropping either of those middle 2 games at home to Indiana or Penn State. But I've seen crazier things happen. Probably the craziest game of the night, Arizona State playing at home against the Washington Huskies. Maybe one of the more wild comebacks I've seen this season. Arizona State was down 25 in the second half. At one point, Washington had a 99.4% probability to win the game early in the second half. But Arizona State came storming back. Frankie Collins scored 19 in the second half after just 2 in the first half. Basically, Bob Hurley, who I can't understand why he's not a good basketball coach. Like, Dan is a good basketball coach. His dad, Bob Hurley Sr., is one of the most legendary coaches in the country. And yet Bobby just, like, since he came from Buffalo, he just has not been able to win. And I don't quite understand it. I don't know. He's passionate, but he's not a great X's and O's guys. And he recruits based on like toughness. He recruits like real tough guards, but he doesn't recruit shooters or like super skilled guys. And that really hurts him. Nonetheless, back to this game. UW went 16 of 26 from the free throw line, missed 10 free throws in this game, and that's what really kept the Sun Devils in it late as Arizona State made their late push. One of the weirder things I've seen happen in a college game happened tonight in this one. Arizona State was down late, and they were pressuring the ball off a Washington defensive rebound. It looked like an Arizona State caught an elbow to the face from Mulcahy, a Washington player. An offensive foul was called on Washington, giving Arizona State the ball back. I believe it was a 2-point game at this time. And they immediately signal that they're going to look at the monitor to see if this is a flagrant foul. For some reason, when they're looking at this, well, let me go back. They look at this, and it was clear that the elbow did not catch the defender from Arizona State. So it was technically a flop. But the call on the floor was a foul on Washington. And they then reviewed to see if it was flagrant. Somehow, the officials determined that they had the ability to change a foul call, and they switched the foul from Arizona State from Washington to Arizona State, which I'm almost positive is not allowed. I don't know in what world it's ever been allowed or a rule where you're allowed to change a foul call in terms of who the foul call is on which team. I don't think I've ever seen that happen. I'm almost positive that is not a legal rule. Nonetheless, they changed the call, and we had this wild finish. So UW is up 2 with the ball with 30 seconds to go. Frankie Collins gets a steal, and he's fouled. Goes to the free throw line for 2. Misses both. Washington gets the rebound. They're fouled. They go to the line and split the pair. On the ensuing possession with 14 seconds to go, Frankie Collins goes up for a 3. He's fouled by Mulcahy of Washington, and he goes to the free throw line for 3 after missing 2. Makes the first, misses the second, and makes the third. So now Arizona State's down by 1 at this point. And Washington gets fouled with 7 seconds to go. They go 1 for 2 at the free throw line, and Frankie Collins goes a length of the floor and gets an uncontested layup, basically, to tie the game with 7 seconds to go. Washington has a good look at the basket to win the game. It rims out, and then they had a wide open putback off the offensive rebound and smoked that layup. And so ended up going to overtime. It looked like Arizona State was going to steal it. They had all the momentum, but They were unable to pull it out as Washington got the win 84-82. Arizona State's last-ditch effort, they had a baseline out of bounds with 2.7 seconds remaining when it looked like they had a wide-open layup. Sean Phillips missed a point-blank layup with 2 seconds to go, and Washington secured the rebound for a 2-point win. Neither of those teams is going to the tournament, but that was just a fun game that I wanted to break down real quick and explain. Moving on real quick, Northwestern dominates Michigan, wins it by 14, 76-62. It was not even as close as that score indicates. And look out for Northwestern, man. They have a really, really good team. Boo Buie is an outstanding guard. And when you have a guard who can take over games like that, and you have a team who is battle-tested, who can win close games, who can make three-pointers, they can win and march. And that is exactly what Northwestern has. I think this team could get to a Sweet 16 if the matchups align for them. They're my dark horse. Them and Nebraska, even though I've been like basically shitting on the Big Ten in this video, I really do. For some reason, I have a soft spot for those two teams. I've really enjoyed watching them play. I forgot to mention last video that Nebraska actually got their first road conference win of the season at Indiana. I guess I somehow missed that game. But yeah, really like Northwestern, and I think that they're going to be somewhere between a 6 and a 9 seed. I think their ceiling is a 6. Their floor is a 9, but they're somewhere around the 7 range right now, I would say. Going through a couple of these, last kind of, little bit of an in-depth one. We've got Tarleton State with a massive upset, not in terms of the point spread. It was only a 5-point favorite. Grand Canyon was just a 5-point favorite against Tarleton State on the road at Wisdom Gym. But in terms of basically Grand Canyon is a 24-2 team who has been the best team in that conference all season. Tarleton State got beat the first time they played by 30-plus points. Wisdom Gym was absolutely rocking. But this was an outstanding game. It started off really, really odd. Nobody could buy a basket like the first 10 or 11 minutes. With 9 minutes to go in the first half, it was 12-6. Tarleton was leading, and nobody could make a shot. The team started the game a combined 0 for 16 from 3. But then Grand Canyon got absolutely hot late. They went on a 29-10 run from that point on in the last 9 minutes of the half, 8-2 in the final minute. Got a 13-point lead at halftime, and it did not look good. But this was a sold-out crowd. They were standing room only, and they were just waiting for the Texans to get back in it. And if they were going to come to life. And every time Tarleton made a run in the second half early, Grand Canyon answered. They cut it to 7 at one point, about 14 minutes to go. Grand Canyon gets it right back to 14 with like 10 minutes to go. And then finally something clicked. They started going some zone. They started really trapping the ball out on ball screens and forced some Grand Canyon turnovers. And then all of a sudden, a downpour game. It was 54-40 with 10 minutes to go. In the next 4 minutes, Tarleton goes on an 18-4 run, ties the game at 58. Ja'Cory Smith, number 6 for Tarleton State, after a horrible 0-6 start, went absolutely bonkers in the second half, finished with 24 to go along with 7 boards. Devin Barnes, the point guard for Tarleton State, was outstanding as well. He had 22 at his own right. 12 of 13 from the free throw line was Barnes. Hit a big jump shot down the stretch, a couple of big finishes. Keandre Gaddy missed some key free throws, but he was a beast. 13 in points and 14 rebounds. 6 offensive rebounds for Gaddy. It was a pretty crazy environment. Tarleton, only has 3,000 seats in that arena, and they were almost all filled. It was packed. It got super, super loud when Tarleton started making that run, and Grand Canyon, who's normally on the other end with their excellent home court advantage, didn't really respond well to that run. It's crazy that Tarleton won this game when you look at the box score. So they shot 39% from the floor, 21% from 3. They were 4 for 18, 72% from the free throw line, and they did not get a single point from their bench. But they had their biggest players step up in the biggest moments, and they made that run late, and they found a way to win the game. As good as the Texans were offensively late in the game, their defense is what won for them. They forced a lot of turnovers, and that's what Grand Canyon's biggest weakness is, turning the ball over. On the other side, Grand Canyon, I still think this team is outstanding. I think they're maybe the best mid-major team in the country. They have this kid, Tyan Grant Foster. He's a 6'7" senior. He transferred from Kansas. He is the real deal, folks. He is a NBA player, no doubt about it. I mean, there were multiple times late in the game where it looked like Tarleton, after that run, they go up 4. It looks like, man, this game is over. And this kid comes down and just nails some tough shots. He's a really, really good player. In March, which I believe that Grand Canyon is going to get in the tournament. I don't know if they would get in that large bid if they didn't win their conference tournament, but they're going to win the conference tournament. The only 2 losses they have in conference have been in true road environments. Nobody's beating them on a neutral floor. They're too good. But that said, I really, really think Grand Canyon has a chance to win a game or two, at least one, in the NCAA tournament. They've been to 2 of the last 3 big dances. Last year, they were not expected to go. They were only the 5 seed going into the conference tournament and found a way to win it and get in. But a couple of years ago, they were really good. This is the best team they've had since Scott Drew has been there. They have a stud in Grant Foster. They've got some really other good players. This is going to be a scary team in March. And if you're a Power 5, Power Conference team, you're not going to want to see Grand Canyon in the first round, I tell you that. I hope they do get into the tournament because they're going to be really, really scary. It'll be a fun team to watch come March. We'll run down a few of these other things real quick before I get out of here. And so Oregon, a couple other big conference games. Oregon hands Stanford a 78-65 loss. The Ducks get it done on the road. In California, they improved to 18-8. They were third in the Pac-12, 1 game behind Arizona and Wazoo. I think the Ducks are going to get in the tournament. Not quite sure. We'll have to see how many teams from the Pac-12 get in. I know it's super down. Cal takes care of Oregon State 81-73 at home. Not relevant, but it's funny that Cal actually is playing much better basketball, right? Like they started off the season horrific. They're actually 8-8 in the Pac-12. Running down a couple other important games just in terms of the other smaller conferences. College of Charleston, who got an NCAA tournament bid last year, damn near beat San Diego State in the first round. Picked up a nice road win at Delaware by 20-plus points to remain atop the CAA standings. They're 1 game ahead of UNC Wilmington. App State gets their 4th straight win. They take care of Old Dominion 15 on the road. They remain atop the Sun Belt. Really, really going to be a fun Sun Belt championship game if it plays out how it should, because App State and James Madison are both really, really good teams. James Madison is 25-3. They've lost twice in conference play to App State. On the other hand, App State's 23-5, but they have 1 less loss than JMU, and they hold the tiebreaker over JMU because they beat them twice. These 2 teams are almost certainly going to meet in the finals of this tournament, and the winner is going to go to the NCAA tournament, and the loser is not going to make the tournament, which is sad because both these teams have a chance to be giant killers come mid-March. Vermont beats Albany by 14. They remain atop the American East at 14-1. The Catamounts last year gave Marquette all they could handle in the first round of the NCAA tournament before the Golden Eagles got it together. Interesting to see where they end up if they are able to win their conference tournament, but they're by far the best team in the American East. They got to win tonight. Morehead State takes care of Western Illinois 78-57. Their first place still in the OVC, Ohio Valley. With just 2 games remaining in their regular season. They're an interesting team. They started off conference play 11-1. They had a game where they went to Indiana and damn near beat the Hoosiers on the road earlier this year. But they've inexplicably lost 3 straight before they won tonight, including a loss to 8-20 Southern Indiana. And I thought they were going to be a giant killer. They've done it in the past, right? Asked 2011 Louisville about that one. But after that 3-game skid, I just can't buy it right now. But they do remain atop the Ohio Valley. Gonzaga smacks Portland by 19. I think the Zags are going to get in. That win against Kentucky on the road a couple weeks ago was a huge win, quad 1 win for Gonzaga that they really needed. Louisiana Tech and Sam Houston both pick up road wins to remain atop the Conference USA standings. They're both tied at 9-3. LT defeated UTEP by 6, and Sam Houston State defeated New Mexico State by 21. Those are the 2 favorites to come out of Conference USA. Probably one of those 2 teams will get the bid from that tournament. UC San Diego and UC Irvine, the last 2 on the slate tonight, both picked up wins tonight. They are both atop the Big West. UC Irvine has a 1-game lead over San Diego at 13-2 in the conference with just a few games left to play there. Those 2 teams have a massive game against each other on Saturday. That'd be a fun one to watch if you're looking for a good off-the-board game here on Saturday.
First place is on the line because San Diego won the first matchup. So if they're able to win, they'll be tied with that split. They'll have the 2-0 advantage over Irvine, but Irvine holds first place right now. That's a big game for the Big West on Saturday. That wraps up our college basketball recap for today and tonight. It is getting late here. So I'm going to get this up and edited. Hope you guys enjoyed this content. Let me know in the comments below if you like this type of content, what you would like to see better. I try to go through this kind of rapidly, but there's a lot to cover, and I want to give you guys some good insight and analysis. Trying to keep it under 30 minutes is my goal. I think I went a little bit over today, but that's all right. Again, like the video, comment, subscribe to our channel, check out our full podcast. Please, please, please do yourself a favor. Go to my website. Once again, www.dylanleaksports.com. That's DYLANLIECK sports.com. It's in the description. Hit that link. Go get you some winners. I've been on a blistering pace in February. College basketball is what I do. It is my life. I'm a former high school basketball coach. I know these teams better than they know themselves. All I do is pick winners in college basketball. Go get yourself some free winners while they are still free, because soon they will be costing a decent amount of money. That's all I've got for our college basketball breakdown. Thank you guys for joining us, and I'll see you tomorrow to break down the Friday slate of games, and I'll have a betting preview for you for some Saturday best bets on the slate tomorrow.